this just into CNN. Donald Trump says he pleaded the Fifth in a deposition today with the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. That happened this morning. She and her team are investigating the finances of the Trump Organization.
And he is facing many legal woes this week. There's also the appeals court that ruled that House lawmakers can get their hands on his tax returns. A judge ordered his former attorney, Rudy Giuliani, to testify for a Georgia grand jury about the scheme to overturn the last presidential election in 2020. And of course, we've also been learning new details about that FBI search at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida.
So let's pick up where we left off. But Abby Phillip, I had to interrupt you to get to that important signing at the White House. And there was news in the midst of that, and that is this long statement on Truth Social from the former president explaining why he pleaded the Fifth. And I just think it's important context because we'll all remember in 2016, as it pertained to the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails, he said, if you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth? Now he says in this statement, Abby, I once asked, if you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth? Now I know the answer to that question, the former president writes. When your family, company, and all the people in your orbit have become targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt supported by lawyers, prosecutors, et cetera, you have no choice. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think this is very much related to our earlier conversation because the argument that Trump is making in this statement is that he is being targeted politically from all sides. And that's the case he's making to his base in order to engender even more support. So this just plays into that. But just, a quick note, because as you were, reading that part of Trump's statement, it did remind me of the fact that Hillary Clinton, in all the investigations that she was involved in, that Trump himself said she should have been locked up for, did testify publicly and privately on these matters. Trump, on the other hand, has tried really aggressively to avoid being under oath in these circumstances, and this is just the latest case of that.
David, let's pick up on that. It's not just President Trump and his family calling this a witch hunt. You have top Republicans, lawmakers, who are saying that this series of events, from the FBI search to his deposition today, which he answered no questions, now possibly Congress getting his tax records. What can be done, do you think, to convince so many millions of Americans that all of this is lawful, that it's not a witch hunt?
He's going to have this is so entangling, it's really hard to sort of sort it all out. But earlier this week, when the FBI agents swept into Mar-a-Lago and got all this information out and everything like that, one had the feeling that the government was doing something that was impossible for anybody else to do, and that was creating Donald Trump as a sympathetic figure. Suddenly he looked like he was being done in by all these forces. But now when he goes and takes the Fifth, he's back to who he was, very unsympathetic, very much, show me, tell me the truth about what you're doing. And I think he's misplayed his hand here by taking the Fifth. Maybe it'll provide temporary protection for some of his people. But in the end, he's going to have to come clean in one environment or another. And it would be so much stronger if he could tell us what's really going on, not only at Mar-a-Lago, but what's going on here in these other fronts, so that the country could make a judgment, a balanced judgment. It's very hard to make balanced judgments about Donald Trump because he always surprises you frequently, I'm afraid, on the downside.
Joining me now for more on all of this is Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist David Cay Johnston, who's covered Donald Trump for more than 30 years. CNN counterterrorism analyst Phil Mudd, he's a former FBI senior intelligence officer, and CNN legal analyst Jennifer Rogers. She's a former federal prosecutor. So Jennifer, let's start with the deposition today. What do you think of this statement put out by the president saying, under the advice of my counsel and for all of the above reasons, I've declined to answer the questions presented to him today. What do you make of it?
Well, this was the million-dollar question, Kate, whether he was going to testify or not. His son, Eric, did take the Fifth over 500 times. Don Jr., though, did testify, and Ivanka did testify. So what Don Sr. was going to do is kind of on all of our minds. And he decided to take the risk of pleading the Fifth. Now, that is helpful to him as far as his statements now won't be in the record. They can't be used in a criminal case or the civil case, but it also comes with consequences because Tish James, in her civil case, if she files one, now can use the fact that he pleaded the Fifth against him and ask the jury to make an inference that his answers would have been harmful to him. So, you know, this is what he's done. It's probably the safer course given all of the criminal investigations into him. But, you know, you have to just go back to the basics and say, if you don't have anything to hide, if your testimony would have been truthful and would not have hurt you, then there's no reason to take the Fifth. So it suggests that, in fact, with respect to his business practices, that there are reasons that he did not want to testify truthfully about them.
And Jennifer, you're mentioning the criminal case, and I'm wondering what this deposition, just in general, could potentially mean for the criminal investigation by the New York City District Attorney.
Well, it doesn't mean much now because he hasn't actually testified. I mean, I know that the DA, Alvin Bragg, has been watching Tish James's investigation. They've been coordinating on their investigations. If he had testified, I believe that the prosecutors in Bragg's office would have carefully combed over that testimony to see whether any of it demonstrated evidence of criminal activity that they could charge. But now that he has refused to testify, it doesn't really give them anything additional to work with.
David, how much is at stake for Donald Trump's business with all of this?
Well, under New York state law, Letitia James could have the Trump Organization put out of business. You have a right to your life, but a corporation does not have a right to its life. That's the worst scenario probably for Donald Trump. Beyond, you know, whether testimony he might have given could have been used against him by federal or other prosecutors.
Does it surprise you at all that he is not answering questions, David?
No, I mean, Donald has an utter contempt for the law. He believes he's special. He has used delay and avoidance tactics his entire career. He could have said a long time ago, I'm going to take the Fifth Amendment if questioned about anything. But he's tried to drag these things out, hoping to benefit from things like statutes of limitations.
Phil, to the other investigation, the FBI search of Trump's residence. The FBI saying, well, the CNN's reporting is that the reason they went in is that they thought that there was a concern that from Donald Trump or his team that they did not return all of the documents that had been taken from the White House. You think there must be more here than a misplaced classified document for the FBI to go in, though. Tell me why.
I do. I mean, I spent 25 years looking at classified.
Oh, hold on, David. Go ahead, Phil.
I'm sorry. I spent 25 years looking at top secret stuff from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Top secret stuff sounds sexy outside Washington. Those documents are a dime a dozen inside the city. I guarantee you. There's 500 people today who will take home a classified document to read because they don't get time to read it in the office. I'm not saying that's appropriate. I'm not saying that's legal. I'm saying it would be relatively common. So the documents are common. Occasional abuse of those documents, I would say, like it or not, is probably relatively common. You've got to match that up with another piece, Kate, and that is two very quiet bureaucrats. That is the FBI director and Attorney General, who are trying to keep their agencies out of the limelight by not speaking, all of a sudden decide to authorize with a federal judge one of the most significant searches the FBI has ever done. To find some classified documents, those two pieces, the fact that these documents would be common and the fact that the Attorney General and the FBI director came out of the sort of shadows, tell me something else is afoot here. And if it's just that these are really super secret, I got to know what those super secrets are because I saw some of the highest level secrets in government. I'm not sure they chased down Mar-a-Lago to find that stuff.
So then, Phil, what do you make of the pressure on Merrick Garland to come out and speak publicly about what this is all about, like I was talking about with Evan Perez?
I would be super cautious if I were him. Remember the James Comey example? There's a couple problems with coming out to speak with one big asterisk. That is the subject or the target, that is Donald Trump, a private citizen, already spoke. So he sort of let the cat out of the bag. What do you say now? I would be still cautious if I were the Department of Justice. First, he's a private citizen. Kate, let's make you the subject of an investigation. When the Department of Justice, if that were to ever happen, let's hope not, says, hey, Kate's under investigation, would you feel comfortable with that? Even without them saying why you're under investigation or why your house was searched, already people are going to assume you did something wrong. You put that private citizen under a limelight. The Department of Justice has to be cautious about doing that. But let's close with the James Comey example. As soon as the Department of Justice speaks, the questions are going to be, did you close the investigation? Why did you close the investigation? When are you going to close it? As soon as you open that door, you've got to keep speaking because you've told people we'll update you on an investigation.